Coming up in our newscast tonight. The government cuts down its economic growth forecast for the year in line with BOK's latest move, while lowering expectations for job growth as well. Plans to address income redistribution and pensions are also unveiled. President Donald Trump says there's no time or speed limit on denuclearizing North Korea. He highlights that talks are ongoing between the two sides and that there's been no provocations by Pyongyang in months. The latest team-up between Seoul and Pyongyang is proving to be a great success. The joint table tennis squad makes it to the Sweet 16 of an international tournament held in South Korea. NEWSCENTER begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program. I'm Daniel Cha. We begin with the Korean government's lowered expectations on the nation's economic expansion for the second half of 2018. Also unveiled through its biannual report are plans to create jobs, provide bigger tax credit to the low-income bracket, and boost pensions. Kim Hye-sung has our top story.
The government has cut its growth forecast for 2018 to 2.9%, down from its 3% projection last December and in line with the Bank of Korea's revised growth forecast released last week. At the same time, the government slashed its annual job growth estimates by around half, from 320,000 to 180,000 newly added jobs, citing relatively low consumption and investment. This comes after recent data showed that a monthly average of 142,000 new jobs were added in the first half of this year, marking the slowest job growth since the 2008 global financial crisis.
There's growing uncertainty in global trade and the financial market due to the U.S.-China trade spat and global monetary policy normalization. If we do not make efforts to solve the current situation, difficulties in growth and jobs will continue. Economic growth could slow down, job growth and income distribution may not improve in the short term.
To help boost the local economy, Finance Minister Kim said the government will focus on job creation, income redistribution, and regulation reform. The government plans to increase fiscal spending by 4 trillion Korean won, or about $3.5 billion within its existing budget, by reallocating money from some of its state-managed funds. For an improvement in income redistribution, the government will support low-income earners by expanding earned income tax credits and hiking the basic pension for the elderly in the bottom 20% income bracket. Kim Hye-sung, Arirang News.
Staying with the government forecast and what's being planned for the second half of the year, it looks like specific measures to support low-income households and the poor silver citizens were also announced. Ko Ryun-hee outlines what they are.
As well as discussing economic growth and job creation, the South Korean government also promised to spend more on the underprivileged. The Finance Ministry announced on Wednesday that it will expand the number of low-income households eligible for earned income tax credit. The ministry said some $3.38 billion will be allocated to income tax credit starting next year, 3 times the amount currently spent. And the number of households eligible will almost double to 3.34 million households. The ministry is easing conditions to qualify for the support program, such as changing the annual income threshold. Economic experts say more measures may be needed for long-term benefits.
Policies like increasing income tax refunds are expected to help support domestic consumption and buffer people from the negative effects of the minimum wage hike. But only in the short run. The government has already injected nearly $3.5 billion in the first half of this year to support job creation, but it didn't help that much because these measures do not solve the fundamental structural problems in the economy.
And to support the poorest senior citizens, the government said it will raise the basic pension for them starting this year. People who are age 65 and older and belong to the bottom 70% of the income bracket will receive more than $220 a month of basic pensions starting this September. This is a $35 increase from the current amount. Meanwhile, to boost consumer spending, the government also lowered the personal consumption tax on automobiles from 5% to 3.5%. But the reduction will only apply for the rest of the year. 고륜이, Arirang News.
The National Assembly Speaker held a press conference today to mark his inauguration. Moon Hee-sang vowed to stimulate the drive for a constitutional amendment again and carry out various measures to ensure it's trusted by the people. Kim Min-ji has the latest from Parliament.
National Assembly Speaker Moon Hee-sang says drawing up a proposal in Parliament to amend the country's constitution shouldn't be a problem if the rival parties can communicate closely and put themselves in each other's shoes. Speaking at a press conference marking his inauguration Wednesday, Moon said constitutional revision is the last phase of the Candlelight Revolution, a movement sparked by flaws of an imperialistic presidential system.
Along with changing the country's power structure, there's a public consensus on almost all areas of the Constitution. Through talks, Parliamentary Special Committee on Constitutional Revision has also been able to make substantial progress. I will meet with the party floor leaders frequently so that we can craft a proposal.
As for the controversy over the special activity funds handed out to ranking lawmakers every month, Moon said his goal is to either get rid of them altogether or to come up with measures that could make the scheme more transparent. Some lawmakers receive thousands of US dollars a month on top of their salary, and there are questions about how the money is spent, since that's not information they have to report.
Transparency is required in all cases. The funds should only be used in areas that are absolutely necessary. Apart from that, the payments need to be scrapped or reduced. Parliament gets a full 1% of all the special activity funds given to government bodies, so we all need to discuss the issue and reach a conclusion. The rival parties have agreed to work on with measures to deal with this issue.
And amid concerns that the National Assembly has lost the public's trust, Moon vowed that measures will be discussed by the parties to ensure that nothing causes legislative affairs to stall, even partisan wrangling. On developments regarding North Korea, the Speaker said he will lead efforts to adopt a resolution in support of the Panmunjom Declaration and later even the ratification of the agreement. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
U.S. President Donald Trump shifts his tone when it comes to denuclearizing North Korea. Contradicting his previous demands for immediate action, the commander-in-chief now says there's no time limit. Oh Soo-young helped us read between the lines.
President Trump has indicated he's not in a hurry to denuclearize North Korea. Speaking to reporters at the White House Tuesday, Trump said there's no time limit nor a speed limit on getting Pyongyang to abandon its nuclear weapons. He was quick to add, however, that talks between the two sides are ongoing, with American hostages back from the north and no nuclear or missile tests in months. Trump's remarks represent a shift in tone from just last month, when the US leader said that the process should start without delay and could begin very quickly. He has accused past US governments of allowing the regime to buy time to build up its nuclear arsenal by engaging in time-consuming step-by-step negotiations with the north. In recent weeks, however, Trump himself has been on the receiving end of criticism for a perceived lack of progress after his June 12 summit with Kim Jong-un. Their accord on denuclearization was largely seen as vague and short on detail. A follow-up meeting between US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and North Korean officials in Pyongyang this month also failed to produce specific agreements or a timeline on denuclearization. Pompeo, however, has stressed he does not have a timeline for the North, and with President Trump's recent remarks that there's no rush, observers are divided on whether this is a negotiation tactic or simply the administration's failure to narrow differences with Pyongyang. North Korea has called for a gradual denuclearization process met with synchronized concessions from Washington. Addressing the growing skepticism on Tuesday, President Trump said that his administration is just going through the process and that discussions are going very well. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Pyongyang agreed to repatriate the remains of 55 American troops killed during the Korean War. This comes after a meeting with Washington for working-level talks on Monday. The Stars and Stripes report, citing a U.S. official, that the remains will be flown out of the north either to Osan Air Base in South Korea or Hawaii. This will likely happen on July 27th, the 65th anniversary of the Korean War armistice. But the official added the date and the number of remains could change as the two sides are expected to meet again very soon. The latest sit-down between the regime and the U.S. didn't cover other issues such as formally ending the Korean War. Seoul will cover the cost for the reunions for war-torn families and the establishment of a joint liaison office using the government's Inter-Korean Cooperation Fund. The total cost is estimated at $3 million. Most of that, about $2.9 million, will be spent on running the reunion and renovating the venue for the event, North Korea's Mount Kumgang complex. Work on the liaison office at the Kaesong Industrial Complex is expected to cost $76,000. North Korea reportedly shipped its coal to South Korea last year. If found to be true, this would be a clear violation of international sanctions. Not only that, Seoul will be in a sticky situation with the rest of the world questioning its ability to enforce the measures against Pyongyang. For details, let's turn to our Park Hee-jun.
South Korea may have violated UN Security Council resolutions after inadvertently importing some 9,000 tons of North Korean coal last year via Russia. Broadcaster VOA reported Tuesday that an expert panel under the UN Sanctions Committee found that North Korea shipped coal from its ports in Wonsan and Cheongjin to Russian port of Kalmsk on Sakhalin 6 times between July and September 2017. The coal was eventually unloaded at ports in South Korea, some of it at Incheon on October 2nd and some at Pohang on October 11th. The ships that carried the coal were later found to be operated by Chinese companies. According to VOA, citing international inspectors, the ships flew flags of convenience from Panama and Sierra Leone, but had Chinese addresses and phone numbers. Under the UN Security Council Resolution 2371, North Korea is banned from exporting coal. An official at South Korea's foreign ministry said the government became aware of the shipments in October, but there was not enough evidence to detain the vessels. He told reporters that the authorities are investigating whether the coal is really from the north and whether South Korean private dealers were involved. He added that they're also looking into whether the cases really do violate UN Security Council sanctions, but he emphasized that South Korea is working closely with the international community to implement sanctions on North Korea. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
Turning our focus to sports now, the joint table tennis teams of Seoul and Pyongyang are off to a great start at the Korea Open. In the women's doubles, the South's Seo Hyo-won and the North's Kim Song-hee demonstrated incredible chemistry. It was a victorious day for the unified squad as they make it to the knockout stage. Here's Kan Young-woo with the highlights.
Table tennis players from 28 countries are competing in this year's Korea Open in Daejeon. So far, 3 of the joint South and North Korean teams are moving on from the qualification round. This morning, in the women's doubles, it was the South's Seo Hyo-won and North's Kim Song-hee. The duo dominated their opponents from Uzbekistan, taking each of the first 3 sets 11-4, 11-5, and 11-2. In the mixed doubles, South Korea's Yoon Chung and North Korea's Choi beat a more competitive Spanish team Tuesday night. Having had only 2 days of practice together, Yoo and Choi were on the brink of elimination after they lost 2 of the first 3 sets. But they bounced back to take the 4th set and force a tiebreaker. In that final set, Yoo and Choi found themselves in a hole again, down 9-7, but scored 3 unanswered points to take the lead, eventually winning the match 3-2.
Quite honestly, I was overwhelmed when I hugged my partner Choi-il. I know it's not winning the tournament, but to me it was like winning the whole thing.
Another joint team in the mixed doubles, Jang Woo-jin and Cha Yo-sim, glided into the last 16 after their Mongolian opponents withdrew. In the round of 16 on Thursday, a joint Korean team will face a pair from South Korea. Yoon Chung and Choi will take on South Korea's third-seeded duo Lee Sang-soo and Jeon Ji-hee. The joint team of Jang Woo-jin and Cha Yo-sim will face off against the second seeds from Hong Kong. Seo Hyo-won and Kim Song-hee will have to go up against the 2 Chinese players who are ranked number 1 and 2 in the world respectively by the International Table Tennis Federation. Kan Young-woo, Arirang News.
Tokyo is rushing to ensure its high school educators teach students that Dokdo is Japanese territory. Seoul strongly criticized the latest in the neighboring country's repeated efforts to intensify false claims over the Korean islets. Woo Jung-hee gets us up to speed with the developments.
South Korea has sternly protested Japan's recent revision of its teaching manual, which intensifies territorial claims over South Korea's easternmost Dokdo Island. On Tuesday, Japan's education ministry posted a guide for high school teachers to teach, starting next year, that South Korea's Dokdo Island is Japanese territory and is called Takeshima. That's 3 years earlier than originally planned. Seoul called on Tokyo to immediately withdraw the plan.
The South Korean government deems it very regrettable that the Japanese government revised its teaching manual for high schools to strengthen unjust claims over South Korea's Dokdo Island and strongly demands an immediate withdrawal of the claims.
Seoul pointed out that Japan would be missing an opportunity to move forward by reflecting on past mistakes if Tokyo continues holding on to, quote, preposterous claims based on the, quote, wrong perception of history.
Dokdo Island is clearly South Korea's territory historically, geographically, and under international law. The South Korean government makes it clear that it won't tolerate any provocations over Dokdo Island and will continue to respond resolutely.
The foreign ministry also summoned Kohei Maruyama, a minister at the Japanese embassy, later on Tuesday. In March this year, Japan issued teaching guidelines that said high school textbooks should describe Dokdo Island as Takeshima starting 2022, but that schedule was moved forward by 3 years on Tuesday. Tuesday's guidelines refer to Dokdo Island as Japan's sovereign territory and claim that South Korea is illegally occupying the islets. Such a change is not minor because the teaching guidelines are legally binding and high school textbooks must reflect what's stipulated in the guidelines. In the previous revision in 2009, there was no direct mention of Dokdo Island. 오정희, Arirang News.
An independent investigation into the military's alleged illegal domestic interference is ongoing here in Korea. Today, some working-level officials from that intel unit were summoned for questioning. Park Ji-won has the full story.
The independent probe team has summoned 3 officials from the Embattled Defense Security Command for questioning, the first officials summoned by the team since the probe began on Monday. Arirang News has confirmed with a military source that they were summoned and questioned on Wednesday. The Defense Security Command is the South Korean military's intelligence unit. The 3 officials are allegedly to have helped draw up the document in question, a contingency plan for declaring martial law during the candlelight demonstrations that ultimately led to the impeachment of former President Park Geun-hye. So investigators are expected to focus on how they got involved in and what exactly they were ordered to write. The document was reportedly written by about 15 people in a period of 2 weeks early last year. It was reported to then Defense Minister Han Min-gu by then Defense Security Commander Cho Hyun-chun. The independent team consists of about 30 people, including 15 military prosecutors, and they have until August 10th, but their mandate can be extended if necessary. South Korea's defense ministry is also collecting all documents related to the martial law plan on the orders of President Moon Jae-in, who told the ministry on Monday to submit them as soon as possible. Meanwhile, a committee at the Defense Ministry is discussing a range of reform measures to overhaul the Defense Security Command. One such measure is reportedly to no longer allow the military intel unit commander to give regular oral reports to the president, which had allowed him or her to bypass the defense minister. A ministry official said those reforms are still under discussion and cannot be confirmed. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
South Korea's Marine Corps unveiled footage of Tuesday's helicopter crash in Pohang that killed 5 and left 1 seriously injured. The 10-second clip shows the vehicle crashing shortly after takeoff as its rotor blades fall off. The Corps launched an official investigation committee to figure out the exact cause of the accident. The MUH-1 chopper was exclusively developed for the Marines by Korea Aerospace Industries, which delivered 4 of them early this year. The original plan was to take 28 helicopters by the year 2023, but that could change depending on the result of the investigation. The EU announced a set of provisional safeguard measures to protect the European market in response to Washington's duties on steel and aluminum. The Commission will impose quotas on 23 steel products and tariffs of 25% on volumes exceeding those amounts. The measures are effective starting this Thursday. According to Seoul's foreign ministry, South Korea has told the EU numerous times that the measures are unjust and asked to be exempted from them. The ministry added it will continue to reiterate Korea's position through various channels. 4 former Delta employees filed a lawsuit against the airline. Reason: discrimination. The Korean leaders claim they were fired for speaking their native language. Seo Bo-bin reports.
4 Korean former employees of Delta Airlines are suing the company for allegedly singling them out and firing them for speaking Korean while working for Delta. The women worked as desk and gate agents at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, dealing with passengers flying to and from South Korea. They were fired by Delta in May 2017. The women were told by their manager to limit their speaking of Korean after other employees complained, but claim other employees were never given similar orders. They also believe their termination was retaliation for reporting sexual harassment. The woman had reported to their supervisor of being harassed multiple times by the same person, but no action was ever taken. Delta has insisted that the 4 women were terminated for allegedly offering unauthorized upgrades. However, the women say it's a standard procedure, particularly for oversold flights, and that other agents do it daily. Delta also said that it does not tolerate workplace discrimination or harassment of any kind, adding that such behavior runs counter to the company's core values of diversity and inclusion and its mission of connecting the world. Seo Bo-bin, Arirang News.
Korea's Busan is rising as a new tourist hotspot this summer. According to travel search site Skyscanner, the number of searches for a round-trip ticket to South Korea from July to August increased 63% on year. The nation's second-largest city saw its tally rise by a whopping 87%. Daegu was runner-up with 70%, followed by Jeju Island at 69%. Gimhae International Airport, which serves the port city, also saw record numbers, more than 85 million passengers in the first half of the year. Mid-July is usually the monsoon season here in the nation, but that's not the case this year. Instead, we're experiencing a scorcher of a weather, a condition set to last at least a week and could go on for the rest of July. But according to our Hong Yu, the anomaly is experienced in other parts of the world as well.
Hiding under the shades and fanning themselves, people try to deal with the scorching weather in South Korea, but they cannot escape from the heat. A heat wave warning has been issued for almost all regions except some coastal and mountainous areas. The temperature in Seoul hit 34 degrees Celsius on Wednesday, and Gwangju was as hot as 36 degrees, much hotter than Tuesday. The weather was worse for Daegu and Gyeongsangbuk-do, with the temperature rising to 37 degrees Celsius at noon. This year, the monsoon season has finished earlier than last year. But South Korea is not the only country experiencing this unusual weather. Other East Asian countries such as Japan and China are also experiencing a heat wave. Experts say that a huge high-temperature belt has formed around East Asia, heating up the region. Some areas of Japan even hit 40 degrees Celsius on Wednesday. The sweltering heat in Japan started last Sunday, and it is expected to continue until the end of the month. Meanwhile, Beijing hit 33 degrees Celsius. The heat wave began on Wednesday after the end of the torrential rain that had soaked Beijing since Sunday. 98.1 millimeters of rain fell on Beijing last Sunday alone, the most ever recorded in Beijing in a single day. As the scorching heat is causing heat stroke in South Korea and Japan, meteorological agencies advise people to avoid excessive outdoor activities and to pay special attention to their health. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
Time to turn to Michelle Bach at the Weather Center for the updates you'll need. Michelle, with the heat wave going on, there are more heat-related accidents being reported, and some of them have to do with cars.
That's right, Daniel. In summer, the temperature inside a car can rise sharply. If the outside temperature is 30 degrees Celsius, then the inside of a car will heat up to 90 degrees Celsius, which is near boiling. So don't leave anything in the car that could cause a fire, such as lighters or empty bottles. Now, in the evening, the temperature doesn't drop as quickly as it rises, which leads to tropical nights. So there's no escape from the heat, and tomorrow will be another scorcher. Beijing and Tokyo will also be baking hot. Now, currently, almost all regions of Korea are under heat wave warnings. And in the southern regions, high levels of fine dust can also be seen tomorrow. And Daegu and Jeju are experiencing tropical nights, as defined by a morning low of 25 degrees or higher, and Seoul is at 24 degrees. By the time the sun is at its highest, Seoul will peak up to 34, Gwangju 36, and Daegu at 37 degrees. Now, it's too early to say this is the peak of the summer because Seoul will get even hotter next week under sunny skies. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we could pack into tonight's edition of Arirang News Center. Thank you for staying with us wherever you may be tuning in from.